All right, week 13 update video, starting with the results from Fantrax. Zoom in maybe a tad. I had a big win over Brad, 12-3-1. Frank with a narrow win over Alex, 8-7-1. And I didn't really look at these matchups to see how close some of these were. Big matchup right here. Obviously, these two teams could easily see each other in the playoffs. It looks like Frank had the better of him on offense, and Alex had the better of him on pitching. And neither were particularly close. It doesn't really look like. So, kind of how you might picture that going. Matthew with a huge win over French, 13-2-1, one of the biggest wins of the season. We had not had many lopsided wins this year. And it was a hell of a week for Matthew, who continues to be a roller coaster of sorts. But a really big week this week. Nico Harrison, getting the victory over Jeremiah, 8-5-3, pushing him a little bit closer to Otani. We've got Corey with a 8-7-1 win over Casey. It's been a lot of close matchups with Corey, but he gets the win this week. And Nate's win streak comes to a close against Dubsy Dimes, who lost a lot of batting where Nate is particularly strong, but he really capitalized, JW did, on the pitching, um, taking 6 out of 8 categories there, and then jumping on a few areas where Nate kind of, struggled a bit and got the 9-7 victory. So JW keeps rolling, and Nate's win streak finally over. That officially means we will not, for the first time ever, have a team that runs the gamut, does not lose after facing every single team consecutively. We were almost there, set up for a big rematch with Alex this week, who is the team that beat Nate last. So props to JW for that. And let's look at some BTL numbers. So it was a really weird week in that we have literally only one team on a win streak. Me, I've won 2 in a row, and only one team on a losing streak. That would be Brad, who lost 2 in a row. Every other team, if they lost last week, they won this week. And if they won last week, they lost this week. So all of our streaks are basically dead. Um, just very strange. And the Fantrax standings, I've actually jumped ahead just barely. Wrong screen there. In the late game yesterday, I ended up getting a hold, which gave me a tie, which gave me a half-game lead over Nate. Oops. So now here are the standings. It's me and Nate at the top, separated by just a half game. Frank, 8.5 back from me, and Alex, 14 back from me. Maffey, JW with a narrow lead over Casey. So that'll be really interesting to see kind of who gets that final spot. It looks like JW is buying and trying to get in and do some damage to the playoffs. I don't know if Casey's still going for it or whether he feels like he's in good position to get Otani. It's going to be really interesting to watch how that unfolds for a lot of these teams. And Casey now has broken out a 6.5 game lead over eighth. So in the pole position for Otani, if that's what he chooses to do. And then French, Bo, Brad, honestly, and Jeremiah and Corey, not separated by much. We have 7 weeks left. Lots of time for this to shake up and change. No one has dropped all the way to the bottom so far that they could not conceivably still make it back up to 7. So let's take a look at the actual VTL figures. I have built a little bit of a considerable lead now. At this point in the season, a 3% gap is pretty sizable. Doesn't mean much, obviously, but it just shows that the performance of Nate has gone down a little bit over the last month. Mine, I think, has gone up a little bit over the last month, and we'll start talking about why here in a minute. Little reasons why. Frank at 54, basically 55 is pretty close to Nate, and then there's a little bit of a gap. Maffey, Alex, Corey, all sitting right around the same 50% mark, and then we have basically the same glut of teams here. Brad's starting to dip a little bit further than the pack, but any of these teams could still finish even in the playoffs in theory. Right now, it's actually JW who's clinging to that last spot, but he's winning a lot of games. So this 46%, I think, is in large part due to bad performance at the beginning. but it's turned up a little bit lately. One interesting note, if you're me, I guess, is that I now have the #1 batting and pitching. So even though Nate was on that massive win streak, I think it was appropriate for me to maybe take it back at this point. Here are the luck metrics. Again, not really a whole lot of interesting things here, except Frank continues to be lucky, Corey continues to be unlucky. Everyone else is pretty close to the middle, so not a lot really to look at there. Here is a look at the individual percentile performances for this week. Maffey with a 96th percentile performance, 63rd best week of all time. That's going to beat pretty much everyone every week. You can rely on that to get you a win. So hence the 13-2-1 lopsided number he put up this week. I had a really good week at 80%. Alex and Brad both had pretty poor weeks, really poor weeks, 15.3%, 11.7 percentile. Those are very bad weeks. Yeah, so here you go. Frank's pitching was miserable. Brad's pitching was miserable. Bo's pitching was excellent. Corey's pitching was excellent. But for basically everyone, if you were really good on one side, you were quite bad on the other, except for Maffey, who was just exceptional on both sides of the ball. Let's go and look at the power rankings. And this contains, those updated fields that I added a few weeks back. So this week it's me at the top, followed by Nate, Frank, Alex. So in fact, we'll come back to this. Let's cut over to the tiers. So right now, I have myself as tier A, aspiring super teams, right? We've seen some trades this week. I've gone in more than anybody else so far, at least recently. And so it feels like until responding moves have been made, I'm probably going to be a tier above Nate and Frank, at least when you look at the team. I think that's justifiable. Again, Nate has cooled down a little bit. Still a very good team. When he buys, he's going to jump right into here, obviously, no problem. Frank, same situation. Numbers are very good. If he buys, he's going to jump in here. Haven't really heard what Frank wants to do, so that one's not a gimme that he's going to buy. He's usually a little bit more conservative than the teams who have won the league, frankly. So I don't know, Frank, you might want to consider buying in if you want to go for it, but you certainly know what you're doing, so I'll leave you alone. Alex, I've jumped him up into the tier B, playoff locks. At this point, this isn't really the top tier right now. I think that's probably just me. And again, once buying moves are made, I expect that tier is going to be much bigger. But I think Alex deserves to be here with Nate and Frank, having made a big buying move himself, which we'll talk about trade stuff here in a minute. To me, any of these three teams right now, if no other moves were made, any of these three teams are equally likely to be a lock for the playoffs, and any of these three teams could seize that second bye in theory. Playoffs likely, I have Maffey and JW. Maffey is a bit confusing of a team for me. There's peaks and valleys, so it's hard to know what you're going to get each specific week, but the ceiling has been demonstrated several times at this point. The floor also maybe a little bit lower than you'd like to see for what you maybe consider as one of the prime contenders. So that's why I think tier C makes sense. JW's DTL numbers are never going to be like some of the other teams because he started off really badly. He's bought in, he's trying to get better. He has some pretty big names coming back from injury soon. I think Andy's in sixth. Most importantly, he's been winning. He's been maybe the most successful team of the last 5 weeks. I'll go check in just a second. So yeah, he's winning. It seems likely that he will make the playoffs to me. I don't expect his performances will get worse. I think he'll just get better. So that's why we're tier C here. The Ohtani chase, I feel like it's down to kind of three teams right now, French, Casey, and Brad. I realize that Brad is technically last in BTL, but he's not last in the standings. And he has not embraced a full sell of any variety yet. I think he's traded one piece off, but it was a pretty decent value proposition, I think. Langford in the third and a fourth or something, third and a fifth for Glasnow, who's always hurt. So, yeah, I think Brad could still feasibly get up to seventh, maybe even challenge for one of these two final spots. French and Casey, kind of same boat. These next three teams, selling teams, unlikely to get Ohtani. Corey has really gutted his team through a series of deals, prepping for next year, it appears, right? Getting some contracts and trying to stockpile picks, hoping that there's enough of a core to build around with those future assets. Bo has sold already most of the things that would be of interest to buyers, and I think he might be even keeping the other pieces that he does have. But if he wants to sell Joe Ryan, just let me know. Jeremiah has also been selling, and he just completed a very big move to Alex, which puts him now in a position more of a probably holding pretty steady where he is. Wants to maintain some core of talent before he goes into next season. So these three teams have sold pretty early. It'd be hard for me to envision they all of a sudden can outdo these three teams and each other and then see seventh place. So I'm kind of seeing it like this, where we've got five tiers. I guess I didn't rename the letter there. And then looking at the actual numbers, last 5 weeks. Yeah, so I've technically now with this big win, 2 weeks in a row, two big wins. I've got the best record last 5 weeks, but Alex is right behind. Nate, JW, Frank, all reasonably close, hence why we're the top five teams in the power rankings. I guess I had this flip-flopped over here. I think JW at fifth has actually been better than Matthew in the last 5 weeks when you see the VTL numbers here by record and by VTL. Matthew still clings to sixth despite technically being outperformed by a few of these teams. Not a big gap. Matthew's higher in the standings. The standings do matter. So yeah, I think the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. Bo, Corey, and Jeremiah both have lost a lot of games recently. Brad as well. So anyways, here's where we are. Alex with Nate and JW on the schedule the next 2 weeks certainly is going to be a challenge. Yeah, I think that's about all we need to talk about here. So I think that brings us really to the end of the normal window, but I want to throw one extra thing in here because I think it's pretty fun. Let's go through the trades of 2025. Might take a little bit extra time. I will, of course, especially because I'm going to talk about them. But I think it'd be fun. We have gone through the month of June, basically. Maybe there's another trade today or whatever, but I expect there's going to be lots of trades in July. Maybe we can break it up. This can be kind of the first half, and then we'll examine after the deadline and look at all the other moves that have been made. I just think it'd be fun to go through. So we have here trade number one of the season was a whopper right after the draft. Mason Miller and Ryan Helsley go to JW, and in return, Bo collects a first and a second. It's a pretty big way to start the season. Bo sort of set the tone that maybe he wasn't thinking of prime contention this year, or maybe he just thought the value was too good to pass up. JW really was leaning into his reliever-heavy strategy without having many starters to bank on. That was quite the firework to get us going. French approached me, I think, about no, maybe I approached, I don't remember. Wallner and Giolito swapped for Nootbaar and Hoffman. Hoffman has a lot of saves, but it's not been good. Nootbaar, I can't stop. No matter how many times he sucks, I just can't stop Lars Nootbaar. So next was Jeremiah swapping Sean Murphy. No, excuse me. He gave up. Nate acquired. Let me start this way. I'll feel this out. Nate decided to kind of plant his flag on Logan O'Hoppe. He offered an eighth and Sean Murphy to get O'Hoppe. And O'Hoppe's been really good this year. Lots of pop. Nate did basically the same deal to get Jonathan Aranda, sending a replacement and a ninth to Brad, Noah Chanel. Aranda's been awesome, probably an all-star. So Nate looks pretty smart in hindsight, even though you look at this and like you're sending an eighth and a ninth for these two guys. Certainly looks like it's going to work. Casey sent away Cody Bellinger, Jose Caballero to acquire Taj Bradley, who really struggled out of the gate, and Jose Alvarado, who was then suspended, and a 15th. So I don't know. Taj has not been himself this year, I don't think. Jose was great, but got suspended. French is probably okay with that deal. Bo acquired Mason Miller and Matthew Boyd from JW in return for Freddie Peralta. I think both sides probably happy with that one. I know Bo loves Mason Miller, and JW's been really leaning on Freddie Peralta this year to be one of his foundational pieces on pitching. This was a big one. I remember Jeremiah trades Garrett Cole on a really good contract, but not pitching this year, of course. and Jacob deGrom for Corbin Carroll, who had been absolutely red hot, one of the 10 best hitters in the league without question. Um, yeah, that was interesting. So Corey at that time maybe still going for it. Maybe he just thought deGrom could get hurt. Garrett Cole might not be the same. Let me just cash in on a guy that I can know I can retrade. Who knows? I think probably both parties happy with that one too. I think because deGrom's been very good and Cole presents a nice upside play for next season. French acquired Spencer Steer and a sixth for Rhys Hoskins. This one I remember at the time I thought, boy, a sixth. Rhys Hoskins. This is in 2019, but I think Hoskins has actually been fine. I don't think Steers hasn't been particularly good. It was the sixth that I think originally kind of got me. But Casey cleaned up on the next one, I will say. Wilyer Abreu, who had a really hot start. I think Jeremiah wanted to sell hot or sell high rather. Severino for Wilyer Abreu. Casey will take that all day. That's a really good contract for Wilyer Abreu. Oh, got to delete one. This next one, I wish I could have back. I acquired Max Muncy and Willie Adames, two buy low candidates, right? Muncy has really turned it around and is incredibly hot right now. So that one has worked, but Willie Adames sucked. Hopefully he turns it around. Alex acquired Clay Holmes, who's been pretty good, Hunter Goodman, who's been very good at the catcher position, and Chris Bubich, who's been amazing. Clearly the best player in the deal. And I think you could probably say Goodman's been better than Muncy, even with Muncy's hot streak. So wish I could have that one back. It looked like a good buy low at the time to me. Next trade, Emmanuel Clase goes to me. Casey acquires Francisco Alvarez, Carlos Estevez, and Luis Arias. Alvarez has been recently demoted to AAA. Estevez, I think, had like 20 saves, so debatable. I think Estevez maybe has been better than Clase. This was, again, me trying to buy low. And Luis Arias, I think he's still on Casey's team. I don't actually know how he's been doing. But again, Estevez has probably been better than Clase, and he's a decent keeper value. Clase not really so much. So Casey's probably happy with that. I believe Clase is coming around. So another Casey and Jeremiah deal. Casey acquires TJ Friedel and a 10th, flipping Taj Bradley, who he had acquired. Who did he acquire him from? From French. So Jeremiah taking a shot on Taj, upside, decent contract, good contract. TJ Friedel's been really good this year, so I think Casey's happy to have gotten the pick and probably the better player. But Jeremiah certainly is, wasn't going to build around TJ Friedel. I think taking Taj and hoping for the ace made sense. JW acquires Brandon Woodruff, Josh Young, and a 15th for Griffin Canning. That was pretty pricey to acquire Griffin Canning. And if I have it right, I think Griffin Canning tears Achilles. Let me see. I believe it's Griffin Canning who tore his Achilles. Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. You paid pretty good price for him, and you are now getting absolutely nothing out of the trade. You basically gave away Woodruff Young in a 15th. Couldn't have known, but that's tough. Casey, man, made a lot of moves. Santana for an 8th. So if you're keeping track, I mean, yeah, two first basemen, Hoskins and Santana for a 6th and an 8th. It feels rich kind of to me, but I respect Casey going for it. I acquire Robert Suarez from Jeremiah for Dustin May and an 8th. Robert Suarez has 20 something saves. I think he's been pretty effective. Dustin May is on a really nice contract, really nice, like $4 or less. Andy acquired an 8th. I think it made sense probably. Suarez is not like on some great contract or anything. So Jeremiah rebuilding, probably good with that. I think I am too. Dustin May hasn't found his groove necessarily since I traded him, so I think I'm good. We've got Casey acquiring Vlad Lodolo, who's on a good contract, McMahon, for Roman Anthony, Matt Chapman, Shane Bieber, and a 2nd. So this was one of the biggest moves of the season for sure. Obviously, Roman Anthony changing hands as the top prospect in baseball. Vlad, one of the preeminent sluggers in the game, and Lodolo on a nice contract. McMahon hitting well at home, I think, at least. Matt Chapman actually has been quite underrated this year. He's been doing pretty well. Bieber's on an immensely valuable contract. just not pitching right now, and a second. So I think both parties got to be happy with this one. If Roman Anthony becomes an all-star, then Casey may look back, but Casey's going for it, right? It was playoffs or bust. Don't remember at that time if it was playoffs or bust or peaked in April, but had to go for it. This is probably the biggest whopper of the season, I think, so far. Maybe surpassed by the Alex and um, Jeremiah trade, maybe. So I acquire Max Fried, Corbin Carroll, Jordan Westburg, Kerry Carpenter, and 3 bottom picks for O'Neill Cruz, Elliot Ramos, pretty good contract. Kyle Bradish, Max Meyer, both on good contracts. Kevin Alcantara, one of the better prospects in the Cubs system, probably going to take over after Kyle Tucker leaves, because I bet he's going to leave. And a first, a second, and a fifth. So there was a lot of bidding on this one for sure. Got split up from a bigger package, and this is how it shook out. I think Corey's still trying to sell some of the other pieces of that. Big deal. Obviously, it kind of pushed me a little bit closer to the top for now. Corbin Carroll obviously still hurt, so it isn't like a massive change for now, but surely it'll help in the long run. Jeremiah acquired Will Smith, Roki Sasaki, Wilmer Flores for Sean Murphy, Samuel Basallo, Luis Arias, a fourth and a fifth. So in one fell swoop, Corey acquires a first, second, fourth, fifth, and fifth. But he dealt a lot of talent out. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Corey ends up with in his keeper core. JW acquires Glasnow from Brad for Langford, a third and a fifth. Felt like JW just wanted to go get his guy. Tyler Glasnow has been elite anytime he's been healthy. He's just obviously has some trouble staying healthy. Tyler O'Neill is a nice lottery ticket because, boy, when he gets hot, we all know he could do a lot of damage. Wyatt Langford on a good contract, $12. And, well, I think that's a good contract. If they can ever figure out what's going on at Globe Life Field, feels like that's a good contract. Getting a third and a fifth back for a guy that wasn't even technically healthy now, pretty questionable whether Brad's going to want to go for it or not this year. So, felt like really good value for Brad, but it also suits JW's purposes because he's in. He needs some arms. That's a dangerous arm. You get a double start in the playoffs from Glasnow, and that could be a game changer. Friends acquires Michael Waka for Hyesung Kim and a 13th. Under the radar, pretty solid guy. Hyesung Kim's been really good, but limited at bats. Doesn't seem like that's going to change. So really more of like a 13th for Waka. I like it for French. I acquire Christian Campbell and Blake Snell for McNeil, Tony Santillan, and Royce Lewis, and a 7th. Felt like some people thought Snell was worth more than this. I think a lot of it hinges on what you think of Royce Lewis, who certainly has not been good for the couple years. He hasn't had a really flashed some really high upside, but again, it's been a long time. McNeil's having a surprisingly good season. Tony Santillan with a lot of holds. Getting Christian Campbell in the deal as well was nice for me. It helped me make another move later. So I'm happy with the value, but I know French obviously talked about being happy with the value too. Big blockbuster, Maffey and French. Maffey gives up a 29th, and in return, he acquires French's 29th. And yeah, I think both players got to be happy with that, taking lottery tickets on each other's draft slots there. So Jeremiah acquires Ernie Clement and a 10th for Bryce Terang and Brendan Little, the middle reliever. Lots of holds, good ratios, I believe. Bryce Terang's base stealer. Ernie Clement, not on a great contract or anything, but he's been really good, so that'll be interesting to see. Justin acquires Brian Reynolds for Gavin Williams and Christian Campbell. No picks. Christian Campbell, of course, lots of upside, one of the top prospects of the year. Gavin Williams was coming into this season with a lot of hype. Hasn't excelled this year by any means, but he's done serviceably. And Brian Reynolds, one of the biggest underperformers when you look at the expected stats based on quality of contact, all that. So I'm hoping he rebounds a little bit. Jeremiah acquires a first, a second, and a third, and Jacob Wilson. These are not right, of course. For Freeman, Harper, DeGrom. That's a big move. So Jeremiah banking on Jacob Wilson being what he is right now for the foreseeable future. loading his picks up. These are all expensive guys. I think 20, 1750, 17 something. So Jeremiah clearly prioritizing keeper value and picks over these more expensive guys. Alex instantly replaces two pretty bad bats, I believe it's fair to say, with two elite ones and adds probably one of the 10 best pitchers in the league right now. Big move. It announces Alex's intentions to buy and really go for it. So that's exciting. And last but not least, just now, today, I acquired Geraldo Perdomo for Willie Adames and Kerry Carpenter. Carpenter up to like 16 home runs already, but he just hurt his hamstring literally yesterday, which Casey was aware of. When he comes back, and Adames has just not had it this year. He hit 30 home runs, stole 20 bases last year, but this year it's been really tough. I needed to get better at shortstop. Casey, I think, willing to roll the dice and see what kind of portion of Perdomo's production he can get from Adames while also getting a nice bat, Gary Carpenter, also with pretty decent keeper value there. So that brings us all the way through June's trades. We ignored anything in the draft. Video is long enough as it is. Thought that was fun. We'll probably do one the same thing once July is complete, just looking at all of the trades leading up to the deadline. Hopefully people actually watched all the way through and thought that that was fun. But if not, you wasted a lot of time after the end of the stats portion of the video. So you must have liked it. I'm gonna assume that you liked it. So, all right, that's it. See you for the next one, week 14. Once that video comes out, we should be able to start comparing like the T1 to T2 numbers because this next week marks 2/3 of the season complete once it's done. So we'll be able to look and see what changes have occurred between the first third of the season and the second third. I always think that that's kind of fun. Maybe I'll finally get around to making a video comparing eras, 1 year versus another year. But it sure seems like trade season is firmly upon us. Definitely some huge moves are coming. Looking at you, Nate, I'm sure big whoppers coming there. Alex and I have no reason not to pretty much go all in at this point. JW's already all in. Frank, it's kind of in your court. Maffey, it's kind of in your court. Any of the next tier down, Casey, I know you've already spent some picks, but French, Casey, even Brad, anyone could really threaten for one of those final playoff spots. It's going to be pretty fun, I think, going through these last third of the season. So I think that's all I got. See you next time.